So we have had some questionable mods, perks, both new and old, added to the game. But here recently, Bungie actually added something that I really didn't know if it was gonna be as good as it sounded on paper. And that is the full auto weapon mod. Now stated right here from the patch notes in update 3.4.0, Bungie added a full auto retrofit weapon mod, which enables your weapon to fire in full auto when the trigger is held. Only usable on legendary hand cannons, sidearms, scout rifles, and pulse rifles. This was also unlocked by default for all players. Now this led me to ask a bunch of questions here. Number one, is this mod really worth using over mods like Icarus or Targeting Adjuster? Number two, will we ever get an Adept full auto mod? Now I know we're reaching there, but think about it. What if we ever got an Adept full auto mod that added like increased hipfire accuracy as well as full auto? And number three, what happens if your weapon already has full auto on it and you apply a full auto mod to it? Does this increase the rate of fire? Now we bring up the rate of fire there because on certain weapons, full auto actually does increase the rate of fire. Take shotguns for instance. One of the best rolls you can get on certain shotguns is actually a full auto assault mag roll. Matador 64 for instance can roll assault mag, which increases our rounds per minute from 65 to 70. And with the trait like full auto, this actually increases our rate of fire by another 10%, although not reflected in the actual stats themselves. Now we can't apply this to a shotgun to test. However, there are certain weapons that have full auto on them by default. One of them being here a contingency plan that we did a frame check on, as the weapon is a Vice rapid fire scout rifle, which allows it to already fire in full auto. And when I apply the full auto mod, the frames here does check out, meaning there is no increase in rate of fire whatsoever, which I know makes sense, but we just have to check to make sure, right? So essentially guys, what full auto does is exactly what it says it does. It allows you to hold the trigger down and the weapon fires in full auto. Now, certain weapons, this doesn't really matter all that much, which is why I want to dive into the weapon types that seem to take the most advantage of this mod and the weapons that you really don't need it on. For instance, we tried it on Hung Jury, which is a 180 round per minute scout rifle. It shoots fast enough. However, being a scout rifle, I found myself tap firing with it. Maybe not inside of PvE, but inside of PvP, especially with certain roles like box breathing on Hung Jury, I play for the 3-tap. And honestly, I don't even know if I always shoot at the max rate of fire when it comes to 180s. However, a 180 that I do like to fire at its full rate of fire are 180 round per minute hand cannons. A couple hand cannons that have jumped out to me with this full auto mod includes things like Survivor's Epitaph, which I've got this kill clip rapid hit roll that I was playing with, both with high caliber rounds and ricochet rounds. And guys, I gotta say, man, even though 180s are not the meta, I know they have a lengthier time to kill value, the fact that you're able to sit here and lay on the trigger really messes up opponents. And this Survivor's Epitaph was actually doing pretty good, especially once you got kill clip going. To make matters even better though, is if you have the correct roll for one of these 180s. I'm still on the hunt right now for the God Roll Vulpecula. You can actually get one with explosive payload. And if you really want to mess with opponents, especially with the full auto mod, slap full auto on there, lay on the trigger, pepper your opponents at 180 rounds per minute. Simultaneously, you've got payload that is completely overwhelming your enemy. Now, I don't have the roll that I want on Vulpecula, but I do have a decent 7th Seraph Officer revolver with time payload in Firmly Planet, which I also got to play with in this full auto mod. So believe me, fellas, a payload perk on a 180 with full auto just peppers your opponent to death. It's great for dueling. The downside is, when it comes to things like Survivor's Epitaph, is its ability to break its archetype with perks like Kill Clip, right? It's a substantial drop there in its time to kill value. We're talking an optimal TTK base at 1 second. But with things like Kill Clip, that drops us down to a 0.67 time to kill. So you gotta weigh the pros and cons. All I can tell you though is that full auto, whatever the role is, whether it's that dueling role with payload perks or that Kill Clip role on Survivor, both of those roles were greatly benefiting from full auto on these weapons. Now, some other weapons that I got to mess around with that also seem to benefit from full auto is, of course, rapid fire frame pulse rifles. I've got a Jurassic Green here, and whether you're rocking Jurassic Green, Darkest Before, Time Worn Spire, all of these weapons shoot so fast that it's almost hard to reach that max rate of fire of 540 rounds per minute by just clicking or tapping your finger. I mean, you got to be really hitting it. But with full auto, you're able to just sit there and lay on the trigger and let the weapon work for you. And this seems to be more beneficial on controller, as a lot of times with controller, it's nice to be able to just lay on the trigger and you can fully concentrate on just controlling the recoil and lining up those shots. Now, rapid fire pulse rifles greatly benefit from this part. Now, as far as the BXR, which is a 450 round per minute pulse rifle, again, we start to enter that territory where I do prefer to tap fire with it. I understand why some people like to still put on a full auto mod on the BXR specifically over other lightweight pulses, and that's because a lot of people like to shoot the BXR from the hip. So if you like to do that, by all means go right ahead. You got to ask yourself though, if you are shooting from the hip, why not just rock freehand grip? You know what I mean? You're already getting that increase in hip fire accuracy with that legacy frame, stacking on there with the freehand grip mod. But I completely understand my console players still preferring full auto. I think the weapon types that you really don't need it on are your mid to slow rate of fire weapons. You really don't need full auto on that. Like, I don't think you need it on Messenger. That's a slow rate of fire pulse rifle. I think most scout rifles, 180 and below, you don't need full auto on them. But 200s, Pleiades, etc., sure, throw on full auto on those weapons. Just understand certain weapons already have full auto by default. Rapid fire frame scout rifles, for instance, Suros sidearms, for instance. However, there are certain sidearms that greatly benefit from full auto. We actually tried out two different ones, one being the Vision, which is a 491 round per minute sidearm. Now, granted, it is a 3-round burst sidearm, so honestly, it is manageable enough to tap fire with. But a sidearm that, to me, is just so fast in its rate of fire and so difficult to reach that max rate of fire without something like full auto, or our adaptive frame sidearms. Take the Keening, for instance, which shoots at 300 rounds per minute. Now, this was a sidearm I was very impressed with full auto. And you're seeing the benefits here of just being able to lay on the trigger and not worry about anything. Just purely focusing on remaining on target and just spraying your opponents. And even this little sidearm right here, that in the past, I would not have been able to manage, even with mouse and keyboard, even tapping as fast as I could, I am still not able to manage this sidearm as well as I'm able to manage it here with full auto. So guys, as far as this mod goes, I find it to be very, very beneficial on our mid to high rate of fire weapons. I think the weapon types you should consider using the full auto mod on, as this only applies to hand cannons, sidearms, scout rifles, and pulse rifles. I would consider it on 180 round per minute hand cannons, 540 round per minute pulse rifles, and maybe your 450 round per minute pulse rifles like the BXR, but you definitely don't need it on adaptives, aggressives, or high impact pulses, and that's the same for hand cannons. I don't think you need full auto on your adaptives or aggressives. As for sidearms though, again, all Suros rapid fires already shoot in full auto, but I did enjoy them on our 491 adaptive sidearms, those 3-round burst sidearms, and I especially enjoyed them on our adaptive 300 round per minute sidearms. Now, there is some 360s out there. Say, for instance, you still got a roll of the 7 Seraph sidearm. Now, that's an archetype of sidearm that would greatly benefit from that full auto mod, considering its rate of fire, and it's a single shot. And even though we do have aggressive burst sidearms and even precision sidearms, I think the aggressive bursts and precisions are still very manageable without full auto. However, I completely understand if you want to use full auto on either one of those archetypes. And for scout rifles, that's another one that's for preference. Personally though, I think 180s and 150s are completely manageable without full auto. Like, you really don't need it, guys. However, 200s can greatly benefit from full auto. Rapid fire scout rifles though already have full auto by default. So guys, those are my thoughts on the full auto mod. I like it. I think it actually is a big change. The question is going to come down to you. For my PvE players, would you prefer being able to lay on the trigger and miss out on mods like minor spec or major spec and that increase in damage? And for my PvP players that like to rock things like targeting adjuster or Icarus, can you live without those mods? To me, I think this is a mod though that provides a lot of ease of use. And on certain weapons that have very fast rate of fire, I think the trade-off there outweighs the benefits of some of these other mods when it comes to specific archetypes. So guys, give it a go. I'm glad Bungie added mods like these. Will we ever get an adept full auto mod? Probably not. We're reaching out here. It would be dope though. I can see where it can also be game breaking, right? If it was a full auto adept mod that simultaneously increased the rate of fire by 10%. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.